Relationship breakdowns are tough, especially when children are involved, and family court proceedings are notoriously slow, hugely expensive and take a toll on everyone involved. Their decisions have even cost lives. Can the government fix a system that is so broken?
Where did it all go wrong?
Family law would be the most discriminate, biased and unworkable policy in this country.
It's like a wolf that's wounded, it's got no teeth.
It is dysfunctional, it doesn't work, it's clumsy.
After an avalanche of criticism, the family law system is finally under review.
Children are dying because this system is so broken.
Child protection advocate Hetty Johnson from Bravehearts.
The court has to change everything about how it does its job if we're going to protect the best interests of children.
We went through family court a while ago now, but I'm never going to forget how bad it was.
This video was made by Bravehearts for the Prime Minister.
I'll never forget how nobody listened, how nobody cared, and how nobody did anything to help protect us kids.
The voice is that of a 12-year-old girl who says she was returned to an abusive parent by the court.
They threatened to take our mum away, all because she told them what our father had done.
These kids are just left on their own and they're left to this family court to try and decide what happens to them without any evidence, without seeing them and without hearing them.
I got really angry one day and drew a picture of what I imagine family court looks like. I see all the people who work there as cockroaches. I could just see them scurrying around and hiding all the bad stuff they do.
There's a system that is completely broken and it's our responsibility to fix it.
By law, we can't identify this young woman. She says the system which should have protected her as a victim put her in harm's way.
Unfortunately, the legal system failed me in a way that it was easier to send me back to the perpetrator on unsupervised access and keep our family unit together as such.
Effectively, the court handed you back into the hands of the person who had been abusing you.
Yes, even with full medical evidence of abuse, of child sexual abuse, they just handed me back.
The court routinely disbelieve children, throw their evidence out.
Hetty Johnson gathered evidence and took it to Canberra. Case studies like this one of a 19-year-old who says she ended up with post-traumatic stress disorder because her abusive parent locked her in a cage.
I've been seeing counsellors since I was 7 years old because of the suffering I continued to go through for years because of the family courts, who kept sending me back to an abusive father time after time.
Do I think it's working? No, I don't. I think the whole system is broken.
Senator Pauline Hanson is another outspoken critic of the system.
A lot of men are actually suiciding, their lives are destroyed, they are destitute and they're distraught over losing their children.
Basically, I've been fighting for custody for my son for the last 2 years. We started when he was 3 months old. I've been accused of domestic violence with no evidence.
This dad, who now has custody of his son, says the court system is too slow and too expensive.
I've spent about $100,000 in the last 2 years. $100,000 could go a long way with his childcare, his future schooling, and to keep a roof over his head.
The courts are underfunded and there's not enough judges around to be able to go around.
Barry Williams from the Lone Fathers Association says often warring partners lie to the court and don't get punished.
There's no perjury within the family law court where people are, what I was trying to say, people are not punished for lying, and they can lie about their partner being violent or something, knowing that they will be stopped seeing their children.
And even when the court orders supervised visits for parents, it's alleged children are still being put in danger.
These videos are proof that the system really is failing kids who are at risk.
Private investigator Natalie Evans has captured vision of supervised access visits where supervisors don't appear to be doing their job.
A parent's job is to protect their child, and in these situations there's nothing they can do.
In this case, Natalie followed a father who was supposed to be meeting his children at a centre to a restaurant.
The most concerning thing that I saw when they were having lunch at the restaurant was the father taking the youngest child to the toilet, unsupervised. They were gone for 5 to 10 minutes. The supervisor remained at the table and didn't seem concerned at all about the father doing that.
And obviously that is a no-no.
That's an absolute no-no.
This mum is the mother of the children involved in this case.
I am one of the many parents, yes, who have had to send my children back into an unsafe environment with the unprotected parent, being told that it's in the best interests of the child for this to happen.
I say that just about nearly every family in Australia would be affected by the family law courts at the moment.
One thing everyone seems to agree on is that the system leaves a trail of destruction. This mum says her child was removed from her when the court was advised not to.
And they knowingly removed this child.
This dad had this message for the PM.
What I want to say to you, Prime Minister, is to start looking after our kids. Start giving them the respect they deserve and the protection.
Finally, the Attorney-General George Brandis announces a review of the system, but not everyone is happy with it.
This is just a political fix. This has got nothing to do with children. This is everything to do with votes and political wellness. And meanwhile, our children will continue to suffer, and so will their parents.
Hetty Johnson wanted a royal commission, which she says would have more power. And she says this review fails because judges won't be called to give evidence.
To omit the judges is just nuts. I mean, how are you going to find out how the system is running unless you're talking to the people that are running it?
We need to get rid of the family court completely and have a commission or a tribunal.
What concerns me is, are they really going to just fluff this up and just, tinker around the edges? Or are they really intending to go to the hardcore of what all the problems are and really have the full intentions of making a big difference? Because if they don't, we're going to see more suicides, more murders and more problems that are going to happen in Australia because of family law courts.
We approached Attorney-General George Brandis for an interview, but our request was declined.
Since the introduction of family law in 1975, it has done nothing but destroy families and the lives of too many Australians. I have a big problem with domestic violence and the lies. I am sick and tired of hearing about another suicide, and I feel for those families that have lost their loved ones because of murders that have happened. It can only change if we actually make it happen. The lawyers have made a field day out of this, ripping the guts out of parents and taking everything from them. At the end of the day, they've got nothing left. They're destroyed. If we want change here, then we deal with the perjury, we deal with the lies, we deal with taking the kids away from innocent parents who are fighting tooth and nail just to spend time with their children.
You might not agree with everything Pauline Hanson has to say, but it's hard to ignore her plea to fix the family court, where parents and children often suffer through expensive and traumatic legal fights that can drag on for years.
I just think that we haven't got it right. I think it needs a complete overhaul.
She's been trying for years, and finally Pauline Hanson has got what she wants, an inquiry into the family court system.
Now, when you're a member of Parliament and you've got people pulling you up, you might even be doing your shopping, and people are trying to express to you how they feel about it, or they may be on the edge. It's awfully hard. Do you think I can walk away from that? I can't.
When it comes to the family court, the delays and the costs are appalling.
As a child, I met with every person in the family law system and I hated it.
I've had 16 court appearances in 17 months, all at the cost of $70,000.
Earlier this year, we brought you the stories of people's anger at the system, told by actors because we can't identify anyone involved in family court matters.
I can honestly say dealing with the family law system was worse than coping with my divorce. I've spent about 8 years in the family law courts, and it's cost me about $100,000.
We also heard from former Federal Circuit Court Judge Stephen Scarlett. Is the family court system broken?
It's not broken, but it is seriously wounded, and it's under a huge amount of pressure.
And former family court judge Peter Rose QC.
And do you think all this is leading to grief in the community?
Yes, without a doubt.
So, Chris, we've heard about domestic violence orders brought against, partners. That is untrue. There's lies being told. People have their own self-interest, but it really, at the end of the day, is it right on the other parent? Is it right for the children? I don't think it is, and it needs to be called out for what it is.
Pauline's comments about people lying about domestic violence aroused a storm of protest and calls for Pauline to be cut out of the inquiry. But the senator doesn't care.
I don't care what those people say to me. Actually, I've been proven to be right in what I've said. So I'm going to stick by my guns. I will see this through.
I'm a professional man. I run my own business. I've never been in trouble with the law. All of a sudden, I'm called up in family court over a domestic violence charge. It wasn't true, but it took over 9 months to get the case dismissed.
I've seen people throw what can only be described as absolute tantrums in court. I've seen people taking a really mean approach to their other partner, especially when dealing with children.
It takes two to make a child, and I just believe that that child has a right to have a mum and a dad in their life, and grandparents and extended family. And it's a shame that their differences can't be settled. And I just feel that the courts aren't getting it right.
The Senate inquiry will consider a wide range of issues, and Pauline Hanson, who'll co-chair the inquiry, wants to hear from people who've been through the process.
They're now going to extend submissions up to the 30th of January. But I would suggest people out there to put in your submissions, in your own words. It's not a complicated form. Have your say. You may have the opportunity to get before the committee.
You'll find the form on the Federal Parliament website. It asks a series of questions about what people think of the system, including the cost to families and the impact on children. And it asks if you want to give your evidence in person.
We talk about the rights of the child, but a lot of parents feel that the rights of the child has been denied.
Insiders say the family law system is sinking under the weight of a backlog of cases. At the end of last year, it was estimated there were 20,000 cases waiting to be heard. That means that families are having to wait up to 5 years to have bitter custody and property disputes resolved in court.
Lawyers are telling women exactly what to do to cause the maximum amount of pain on fathers in the hope that they would give up.
Look, Chris, we're wanting to go to every state and territory in the country. We want to take it to every capital city and regional areas. Let's hear from the everyday Australians, and that's what I want to achieve out of this, and let them feel as if someone is truly listening to them. Over the past year, it's been an immense privilege to be in the role of Deputy Chair of the Joint Select Committee on Australia's Family Law System. The work of the committee has revealed what many of us know, that the proceedings, structure and systems of the family court profoundly impact more Australians than any other part of our legal system, and too often that impact has devastating effects. I first brought up many of these issues and problems in and around the family court back in 1996, and I have never wavered in my belief that the family court requires far-reaching and a thorough overhaul if it is to properly serve the millions of Australians who come under its influence. This bill and the changes recommended are close to my heart, and I speak with the benefit of first-hand knowledge. I have personally experienced and survived the family court as a wife, then as a mother, and later as a grandmother. And yes, I have experienced domestic violence. I have described the scope of these impacts previously in this place, and I can think of no better way to focus our minds on the human motivation for this bill than to quote my words from Hanson. The family law system has been and continues to be plagued by deep emotions, sadness, financial hardship and bankruptcies, long-term psychological damage, abuse, stress, suicides and in some cases murder. And I paraphrase here, including the murder of children by both male and female parents and extended family members. Unfortunately, there are those in the community who thrive on the pain of those going through separation and the courts, lawyers who charge exorbitant fees to the point of bankrupting clients, feminists who relish the toxic anti-men rhetoric, and jaded partners who will stop at nothing to use their separation and the court system to crush their rivals, including unfounded claims of domestic violence. Unfortunately, they are also harming their children in the process. Put simply, we need to revamp the system to make it better for everyone involved. The family court is in an unusual position of being a rigged, formalised judicial body that is tasked with overseeing challenges that are human, all unique, emotional, and characterised by vulnerability. And as I've said previously, a one-size-fits-all approach in this arena will always fail. End quote. Participation in the family court system, whether willingly or when a person is dragged in and compelled to defend allegations, has taken an all too often terrible toll on potentially millions of people in this country. This bill is the product of a series of reviews that began when the Simple Review in 2008. The Simple Review produced a report titled Future Governance Options for Federal Family Law Courts in Australia. This report found, and I quote, "There exists a significant level of duplication of administrative structures and corporate services across the Family Court and the Federal Circuit Court," end quote. The report found that the structure and costs were not financially sustainable. It also found the structure took up a resource that could have been used more effectively to assist people appearing before the court. The 2012 Skill Review looked at a number of options for action designed to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of court administration. The 2014 KPMG Review found the current funding model for the courts was not sustainable, and simply throwing money at the problem was not a solution. In 2018, yet another review, the PwC Review, looked at the operations of the courts in relation to family law matters. Which brings us to 2019, when the Australian Law Reform Commission Review, commissioned by then Attorney General Brandis, handed down its report. And if, following report after report and review after review, you didn't already think there was reason enough to be here today, just listen to the Commission's report, which said the family law system has been, and I quote, "deprived of resources to such an extent that it cannot deliver the quality of justice expected of a country like Australia. There is a chronic lack of funding for the appointment and proper training of judicial resources, court-based social services professionals, including family consultants and Indigenous liaison officers, and legal aid services, including independent children's lawyers. As a consequence, children and families are deprived of sufficient time and attention being given to the matter at all stages of the process, with the obvious risks that this entails." End quote. So a decade of reports and reviews confirmed time after time the system, the structure and the funding of the courts in this most critical of areas were all wrong, and proved that tinkering at the edges left a trail of devastated families in its wake. At the time of its interim report last October, the Joint Select Committee, in which I serve as Deputy Chair, has received more than 1,500 individual submissions, as well as 169 submissions from organisations, academics and other professionals, all of which brings us to today and the bill before us. We are told by the Attorney-General that the structural reforms contained within the bill will help Australian families resolve their disputes faster, provide appropriate protection for vulnerable people, and ensure suitability qualified and experienced professionals are available to support families in need.
I also note that the proposed structural reform of the federal courts is intended to create a consistent pathway for Australian families in having their family law disputes dealt with in the federal courts, improve the efficiency of the federal court system and ensure outcomes for Australian families are resolved in the most timely, informed and cost-effective manner possible. We are told also the long overdue structural reform has the potential to allow an extra 8,000 cases to be resolved each year. That's 8,000 cases. Just last year we had an extra 45,000 cases come before the Federal Circuit Court. That will resolve an extra 8,000 a year, which no doubt will reduce the significant frustration felt by so many families. There has been criticism of the bill from some legal quarters that does not surprise me. I believe it's fair to say that being appointed a judge of the Family Court of Australia has, until now, been regarded as a golden ticket within the legal profession. Any alteration to the current system will probably upset the long-term retirement and pension plans of some in the profession, and I don't doubt that's where a lot of the squealing and resistance is coming from. This legislation will provide a single pathway for Australian families to have their family law disputes dealt with within the federal courts. That's our first priority, is the people of this nation that are going through the hurt and pain, not only of a separation from their loved ones and the families and their children. It's the fact is they have to face our family law courts. They are our main priority. And if we can address this system and clean it up and make it easy for them, that is our job. I'm not interested in what the law fraternity want and their comments. It's all about the people in Australia. Under this reform, there will be a single set of rules, procedures, case management and practices. But as the law currently exists, these changes cannot occur without the agreement of a majority of judges in each court agreeing to respective rules. That's why this bill has been drawn up, because they can't come to any decision because it may affect them personally. That's why we have to make the decisions on the behalf of the people of this nation. And a lot of people in this chamber, and I've explained to you, I've gone through the family law courts as a wife, as a mother, as a grandmother, and I've seen my children go through the pain and anger and what they've had to go through. How many in this chamber have actually experienced that? How many have actually experienced domestic violence? That's a question that we need to ask. People need to know. And to sit here in judgment of people that you have you've never worn their shoes. All people tell me all the time, pull me up, is that please do something. I can't see my children. I have, this long system of waiting. You can't get to see your kids, or it's under supervision. The pain and anger that people feel, the suicides, the murders of children, filicide. It's always raised about, and I can constantly talk about the fathers out there, because they are the forgotten ones in many cases, and it shouldn't be. We talk about filicide, which I've raised. The stats show that filicide is committed by women more than what men are. That's murder of your children. But no, don't discuss that. These facts need to be open to the public, because I will not have any man wrongly accused and pointed at or downtrodden by feminist organisations or people with their own agenda. It's not about the sex, it comes down to the children. It's about the marriage breakups and what's happening, that we have to address all this, wholesome, that we can find the answers to it. This action takes it out of the hands of judges who have been appointed for life and puts it in the hands of the people through their elected representatives, us. In other words, It takes it out of the hands of those who have a vested interest in maintaining the system and retaining extraordinary well-paid jobs for life, and puts it in the hands of politicians who remain directly answerable to the electorate. And this restructuring, we are told by the Attorney-General, will not lead to a diminishing of specialisation. In fact, in the Federal Circuit Courts, we have about 63 judges. 50 of those judges are specialised. They have an average of 25 years' experience in family law, and a lot of the Federal Circuit Court judges go on to become family law court judges. They hear an extraordinary number of cases a year, not only family law, but migration, civil matters, other matters as well. But in the family law court, they don't have the workload as the others do in the Federal Circuit Court. If you want a decision in the family law courts, you're waiting over 26 months. In the Federal Circuit Court, averages 23 months for a decision to be handed down. No wonder there are so many suicides and depression and problems. And it's not only the parents who are going through it, the children are going through it as well, because they don't have that contact with their parents. They're denied that right. And the court system, and I've got to say that it was One Nation that brought it to the government's attention over 3 years ago with the Lighthouse project, which has now been installed into the law system, into the courts. And this is working to help with domestic violence. It was One Nation that actually brought it, because I could see the potential that this was a wonderful thing that we have. And it's been utilised now, and I'm pleased to see that. Many other changes that I will be proposing to the committee that I'm Deputy Chair of. But this needs to happen. We need to merge the two courts. The restructuring has to happen. I can't accept that this restructure will in any way diminish the experience or the expertise of judges involved going forward. The restructuring proposal in the bill is long overdue, and it's intended relief for families before the court is urgently required. I have maintained my efforts to reform the family court for over 20 years, and I am genuinely happy to strongly commend and congratulate the Attorney-General for presenting this bill in its current form. It represents a significant step forward, and I confirm that One Nation will be supporting the bill.
Well, there's been a mixed response to the federal government's surprise decision yesterday to hold an inquiry into the family court system. The review comes after years of lobbying from One Nation leader Pauline Hanson, who joins us now from Canberra. Pauline, good morning to you.
Good morning, Georgie.
You have been pushing for a shake-up of the family court for years. What do you want to see come out of this inquiry?
I want the people of Australia to have a say. I have that many come to my office, pull me up in the streets. They're devastated, destroyed by the whole system, the family law system that they say is unfair, unworkable. It covers many areas about the cost of it, about child protection, child support, payments that they're making or not getting. The workings of the court, Georgie, it is so far and so extensive.
And of those issues, what do you believe are most urgent? What need to be addressed urgently?
What I'm hearing is parents that are not having the opportunity to actually see their children. The court system is dragged out. It takes months to get into it. Then the cost involved with it, whereas a lot of parents can't afford to even go through the court system. They're not getting to see their children, and then they're paying exorbitant amounts in child support. What I like to see is right from day one, 50-50 custody. And you sit down, you mediate about the time. Unless the person has a criminal offence, they're on drugs or alcohol abuse, or they've actually committed domestic violence prior to separation. Let's make that a starting point. In legislation, there is 50-50 custody, but it's at the discretion of the judges. And I don't think that's good enough. Look, it's about what the people want. I want to hear from the people and these organisations themselves.
You in fact believe the family court system is unfair to many men. Just elaborate on how men are being let down particularly.
Well, they are. There's organisations out there that are purely set up, to try and help men. We don't fund them. We don't give them assistance, and I think that is wrong. We call for equality. I always have called for equality for everyone. I think that a lot of the women out there abuse the system by instigating false DVOs against their former partners or their husbands who use that to further their needs. I think there are some lawyers out there that also push that point of view. I think that's unfair to these fathers, and I know that the court system doesn't have the ability to prove whether it's false claims. There is perjury there, but no one's charged with perjury. The whole thing needs to be, people must be responsible for their actions. I am totally against domestic violence, don't get me wrong. But when someone wants to text and say, I want to see my child, or asking about the child, and that's a domestic violence order, I don't think that's good enough, and it's not right.
All right. The flip side to that, of course, though, is that campaigners against family violence are outraged by this decision for an inquiry. They say we don't need another inquiry. The Australian Law Reform Commission handed down 60 recommendations just 6 months ago, and the government is yet to respond to those recommendations. Isn't that where you should be applying the pressure?
Georgie, we've had these inquiries. Yes, we have had the ALRC, the sample review, and we've had the KPMG.
So why another one?
KPMG, because they only tackled certain areas. ALRC was only about the court law, about the law itself, the family law itself. KPMG was about costing, and the sample report was about the court structure. This is holistic, where we go into it a lot further with family law. Grandparents that don't get to see their children as well, they have a right to see their parents. Child protection. So it goes beyond this. This is a holistic view about it. Now, this is why I don't want to run for a short period of time. It's not just about me. It's about sitting down with my colleagues, the other parliamentarians, and coming up and speaking to the chair, Kevin Andrews, about how we want to deal with this and take it forward.
And just on that, you, as I understand it, want to co-chair this inquiry. How do you respond to critics who say you're not an expert in domestic violence and therefore not suited for that role?
No one knows of my role and what I've actually experienced in my life.
Are you suited to it?
Sorry?
Are you suited to be co-chair?
I most definitely am suited to it. And people, my experiences in life is going to be very beneficial in this inquiry. I've been through this as a mother, as a wife, and as a grandmother. I've experienced it for years and listening to the people of Australia what needs to be done. But this is about listening to the evidence that's put before us to make a well-informed decision. It's not just about my views. It's about what the whole panel, all the committee members, will come to their final decision. That's why I don't want it rushed. I don't want it. I want to take it to every state and territory in this country. I want to see it in rural and regional areas. Let the people speak. Let them have their voice. And these people want to shut it down. That's disgusting. It really is. This is about the people who are crying. This is about deaths that are happening, suicides, even women getting murdered. So what's your answer to it, I say to those people? What's your answer?
And what about the suggestion from some that this has been given the green light by the Prime Minister because he needs to keep you on side in the Senate? How do you respond to that?
A load of rubbish. Absolute rubbish. I put my case forward, and I originally spoke to Malcolm Turnbull about this, then I spoke to George Brandis and about having a review into the family law court system. I was the one who got the Chief Justice, Diana Bryant, down to Canberra and had a meeting with her and the CEO Registrar of the courts. And then George Brandis followed it through and had an investigation into it. So the whole fact is I've been on top of this and how I've put my case forward. I will fight for many things in this parliament, and I will prove to the ministers, or I will prove to the Prime Minister, how worthy this is. He understands. He knows how important this is to the people of Australia, and he's backing me on it. And I thank him from the bottom of my heart for that. And I thank all the other members of Parliament who are going to be on this panel with me. But I want to work with them. Forget about your politics. This is about pulling together for the people of this nation.
Yeah, and it is an issue that affects so many families right across the country. We'll be hearing from the Prime Minister just after 7. Pauline Hanson, we appreciate your time this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, George.